Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I'm Josh Williams and I'm joined by David Hughes. Dave, how's things? And whatever you're eating, mate, you're enjoying it?
You know what, mate? Right, I was thinking we're on video here, and I keep playing with sweets in my teeth. It's licorice. Do you like licorice? I'm going to say a guess now and say you don't like licorice.
I don't know, but I don't mind a little sugar boost ahead of Analysing Anfield, to be honest, give you a bit of a kick.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going for, mate. Never used to like it, but I do now. So just having a few gummies of it now before we get started. So on top form.
Yeah, well, we've got a bit to get through. We have to talk about Brighton, even though it was a while away. So because it was a while away, we're recording again this week on a Thursday. We're just going to touch over some narratives ahead around that game, really, rather than going through the match bit by bit. We're going to do roughly similar for Atletico Madrid. Fairly straightforward win, Liverpool now qualified and things. And we're going to spend a bit of time looking at West Ham. Upcoming match this weekend should be a tough one. But just rolling it back then to Brighton, Dave. Just in terms of, I suppose, the specifics of the game. Liverpool's defence, I think, come out of it as a bit of an issue, really, I suppose, because Liverpool went into the game, started fairly well, and gained a 2-0 lead. And you'd expect any Liverpool side, specifically at Anfield when it's a full stadium, with Virgil van Dijk and the likes in defence, you'd expect that team to keep hold of the 3 points, see it out relatively easily. But it weren't the case. Liverpool obviously went on to concede 2 and dropped 2 valuable points, Dave.
Yeah, I think you've summarised it quite well, to be honest. At 2-0, you assume the game's done, especially with, relatively speaking, 2 early goals. And look, let's be honest, it should have been, really. We'll talk about Brighton, so we'll give them due credit shortly. But Liverpool should have won that game, to put it bluntly. Even without the 2-0 lead, Brighton a very good side, but they're probably, maybe the 7th best team in the league, something like that, 6th, 7th, at a push. And, Liverpool should be beating those sides at home. Didn't, and then obviously it's kind of enhanced the issue by throwing away 2-goal lead, drawing 2-2, and nearly conceding a third. Obviously, it was chalked off in the end, wasn't it? But yeah, it was very unusual and certainly not something we've come to expect from this side, especially this version of Liverpool. Maybe last season you could have comprehended it a little bit better, but there's a lot of similarities with this season's Liverpool with the one that won the league, and you wouldn't have expected to see that team win the league winner side, kind of throw away 2 points like the one on Saturday did. So yeah, a little bit of a rare blemish, I think, on the campaign so far, that one.
Yeah, I think looking at the match, the way the match played out, the numbers behind the match, I do think Brighton deserved it, actually. If you look at the scoreline, 1.1 versus 1.1, which is a very symmetrical elements there that we don't usually see, to be honest. So you're not getting a more perfect draw there, to be honest.
You know what? Just sorry, mate. Before you continue on that point, I expected to look at the timing chart and see Liverpool kind of dominate, then maybe sit back, and then that's where Brighton accumulate their shots, XG, etc. But I'd look at understats, and it wasn't really the case. It was quite an even game throughout, which I just thought was an interesting thing to point out.
No, I agree. Yeah, I do think maybe I painted a few minutes ago that it was the tale of 2 halves, but I think performance-wise it probably wasn't. Brighton did offer a threat early on. I think they had the best chance earliest in the game, actually. Liverpool took 14 shots, Brighton took 10. And I must admit, I was impressed with their general approach to the game. But before we move on to that, I just do want to touch on Liverpool's defensive numbers for the season. We're now 10 games in. So, obviously, we've touched on the numbers so far a little bit this season on the podcast. But they are a little bit up in the air up until roughly 10 games in, when you start to see a little bit of consistency. You can look at the numbers now with a degree of accuracy, at least. And if you look at Liverpool's numbers for the season, so far we've conceded 8. Chelsea conceded 3, and City conceded 6. but crucially, the underlying numbers do look quite interesting. So in terms of expected goals against, City by far the best. Only being expected to concede 6.7 goals so far. Then you have Wolves alongside Chelsea. Then you have West Ham. Then you have Palace. Then you have Liverpool. So that's not great. Liverpool have benefited in certain moments as well from playing against 10 men. So considering Liverpool floating around, 6th, 7th, 8th in the table for expected goals against, doesn't look that great, really, does it, Dave?
No, I'm quite surprised. I must be honest. I hadn't had a look at that. And I knew you were going to cover it on the show, so I thought, well, I'm not going to look at it because, I'd rather just listen to you, same as everyone else is now. Listen to them direct. And yeah, very interesting. I wouldn't have had Liverpool that far down at all. I could, the way I kind of split the table up at the moment, and this is from like a performance metric perspective, is I kind of see the top three, Liverpool, City, Chelsea, in like a league of their own, and there's normally changing orders between them and then the rest of the division. So to see Liverpool so low down that particular department is quite a surprise. I didn't expect it. I had noticed that maybe Alisson had been quite. I don't know if I'd say overperformed, but he'd been making big saves when relied upon, when Liverpool had conceded big chances. So I guess that plays a part in it.
He is overperforming for what it's worth. He's third
Yeah,
in the table so far for overperformance.
Well, that would match the eye test really, because he has pulled off a lot of kind of big save and key moments so far this season, which is probably why Liverpool have only conceded 8 times. What is the actual XGA number against? What is the total? Sorry,
11.2.
Yeah, because that is quite a big difference for this. It's only 10 games in. If that was maybe across half a campaign, it would be a little bit more reasonable. But that is quite big. Which is, I'll tell you what else is quite interesting, Josh, just while we're talking about the defence. And this isn't going to lead to me criticising Alisson in any way, but I've noticed that Liverpool conceded twice from outside the box this season, and that was the amount of times that Alisson conceded from outside of the box across each of the last 2 seasons combined, and with over 3/4 this season to go, you bet that there's probably going to be a couple more in there, and it's just that's been a trait for a while that Liverpool don't really concede from outside the box when Alisson's in goal, and now it's happened twice. And one of them, by the way, from the previous campaigns, was a free kick that missed everybody and went in. Do you remember at Leicester?
Yeah, I think so.
It's like a low one. I think it goes around like knee height, misses everybody and goes into the far corner. So probably wouldn't even count that one.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. And another interesting element of Liverpool's defensive numbers is, despite the expected goals being how we've just described, in terms of shots faced, it's nowhere near as bad, really. City's still by far and away the best, only facing about 6.6 shots per match. But Liverpool is second best. So Liverpool only facing 10 point... Well, not only. I mean, it can still be... Liverpool have been better than this under Klopp. But Liverpool facing 10.4 shots per match. Chelsea facing 10.5. Wolves facing 11.2. Brentford facing 11.4. So I think what that captures is, if Liverpool are roughly 7th or whatever it was for expected goals against, but the 2nd for shots faced, that obviously suggests that when the chances do come, when the shots do come, they're quite clear cut for the opponents. And that's kind of captured really by the expected goal per shot that Liverpool face. It was the worst in the league. It's a little bit better now. But Liverpool do generally just allow easier chances on their goal than a team like Chelsea, for example. And it's something that Liverpool... I mean, the attack is top, absolute elite at the minute. So you've got a bit of a weird balance there, haven't you? I think in the past few seasons, specifically since Liverpool invested in the defence, by getting Alisson in, by getting Van Dijk in, losing Coutinho, Liverpool have been as good in defence as they have been in attack. But I think this season you are seeing a little bit of a tip towards the attacking side of the game compared to the defence, and I think some of it could be attributed to I think Liverpool's midfield three is just more attacking than it has been in past seasons. Like if you think of what it was when we won the league, Fabinho, Henderson, Wijnaldum, and if you think of what it's been at times this season, Harvey Elliott, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Curtis Jones. These are just more attacking players. I think more free flowing players in the games and things. And obviously, there's been plenty of rotation in midfield as well, compared to Wijnaldum, who would play every week. So I think although you can put some of this blame on the actual defence, I think you also have to put some of it on the midfield, really.
Yeah, because defending is a team task, isn't it? Although people tend to just look at the defence alone. You kind of think, well, from that standpoint, goalkeeper, for example, goalkeepers performed really well. There's not an alarming issue there. He's overperforming, as we just said, and it does point to a little bit of what's going on higher up the pitch. And an interesting thing when you talk about that league winning midfield was obviously, although there would be some rotation, there wouldn't really be a rotation in terms of profiles. It tended to be the same, similar players going in and doing the same roles, where it does feel like there's a more dynamic, varied midfield that go in now. I know Elliott was lost due to the injury, but you think of Elliott, you do think of Jones, you think of the players you've just named. They all kind of bring different things, and you wouldn't necessarily say that they're all copies of each other, which I thought there was a little bit more of that a few years ago. So yeah, it does change the dynamic, which has an impact on the team around, and maybe this is a consequence of what we're seeing. A little bit more of a trade-off, for more penetration from attack, but obviously leaving yourself wide open at the back. A team who, if you remember City in the season that Liverpool won the title 2 years ago, they're the exact same traits of what Liverpool have got now, haven't they? I think they were conceding really high shots in terms of XGA. As an average, I think it was the highest in the league, and obviously it looks like Liverpool have kind of are doing something similar at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it progresses throughout the rest of the season. I am inclined to think that when Liverpool stop playing midweek games, which is fairly soon, because the Champions League group stages will finish, obviously, and when the international breaks stop and Liverpool can play, consistently and basically get in a flow, and hopefully you've got the same midfield for a few weeks and things like that, I do think Liverpool could get into a bit of a momentum flow where it just becomes quite routine, really, to just, because Liverpool so far this season, we seem to have had games where the defence has looked so assured, safe, composed, but there's been the odd random game where it's looked a total mess. Like Brentford comes to mind. I hated watching our defence in the Brentford game. I know it was a thriller and things like that, but I was very much sat there just hating what I was watching, really. And I think the same can be said about Brighton a little bit, really. And in the first half, I suppose, against Manchester City. So it's just been at times for like half-hour periods, 45-minute period, Liverpool have looked a bit of a mess. But then for the rest of the season, we've looked like our old selves. So I am inclined to think when you get a bit of a flow going and you're playing every week and you've got the same players available and stuff, no international football, Liverpool, I think, will go on a bit of a run. Defensively good and things like that. Hopefully Van Dijk will get into the groove and stuff.
Do you still think Van Dijk's out of the groove, do you? What's your observations on it?
It depends what you mean by out the groove, actually, really. I think against Brighton wasn't his best. Brentford wasn't his best. Atletico Madrid away was definitely not his best. But against Atletico Madrid last night, he was very, very good. And he's looked very, very good in certain moments. There was a defensive moment the other day. I think it was against Brighton, actually, where he just dealt with it by heading the ball to himself, I think. In fact, no, I don't think it was against Brighton, but I can't remember who it was against. But that kind of, he was invincible Van Dijk when he was in absolute peak Liverpool form. And although I think he's still comfortably well above league average, comfortably still for me the best defender in the world, I think he's just still not that invincible figure. You know what I mean? So it's hard. I actually think Matip so far has probably had a better season than him. But then if you was to ask me for the next game, you can choose one of Van Dijk or Matip to play, I would still choose Van Dijk every day of the week. Have you got any thoughts on that one? Or
No, I agree. I think it is just contextualized, isn't it? Because Matip's kind of above form or performing at his best is probably Van Dijk's kind of run-of-the-mill performance, if that makes sense. And that's not to do with Matip at the service. He's a very good defender, as we've said many times on the show. But I think maybe Van Dijk's performances where they're not at the best are more noticeable because they were so kind of commanding and dominant when he was at his best. I'm just curious to see what you thought and just to see if this is kind of him getting back up to speed or if maybe this is the kind of player you'd have to we'll have to see. As I said, I'm not trying to make out he's been bad by any stretch, just maybe not where he was.
Yeah, but again, I think that is quite normal, and I think to an extent he can be now a bit of a victim of his own standards, really, because you got to consider what I am judging Van Dijk on. You've just asked me to what is he in the groove and things. I am judging him based on essentially perfection, because he was perfect, honestly, for like an 18-month period, totally flawless. Like I've never seen anything like it. So when one or two little moments creep into his game or whatever, there's just them stupid question marks, isn't he? But I still think he's absolutely fine. Nothing to worry about there. But before we move on from Brighton, I just wanted to give a flag towards Graham Potter, Dave, because I think a few weeks ago at the Q&A, someone mentioned Potter in reference to replacing Klopp. Now, I'll be honest, I can't see it purely because of the person that he is, Potter. Because I think specifically, Liverpool as a city, we need a bit of in my opinion, we need a bit of a Klopp type figure, like a us against the world type guy, and loud, bold, really bold person type thing, lots of character. And Potter comes across to me as, I don't want to do him with this, almost too nice. I don't know if he is. I've got no clue.
Polite.
Too polite, maybe, yeah, a bit, that sort of thing. But what I will say is, I think he's doing a great job. He's silently, without any of us even really noticing, transformed how Brighton play compared to when Chris Hughton was in charge. Brighton's numbers are great. He's currently working as part of a very similar structure set up behind the scenes to what Liverpool have got in terms of a technical director and working with specific recruitment that's very unique and things like that, and he fits quite perfectly in Brighton's system. You never heard of any issues or anything like that. And specifically in the game against Brighton the other day, I was really impressed with them. I thought they caused Liverpool major problems. I was very impressed with the game plan. They were very brave with the game plan, didn't just lie down because it was Anfield. They gave us a proper game. So I think looking at Potter as a whole, considering Klopp's not rumoured to go for another 3 years, I do wonder where Potter might be in 3 years, and I would not be that surprised if he's kind of in contention, if you like, to be like the next in line.
Yeah, I think what really stands out with Potter is the way he implements a style that mirrors the best sides. Obviously every side has a different kind of tactical quirk or differences in how they approach things, but just in the sense of being a really organised team who will tend to build from the back, quite controlling, do a good job of building through the line, through the phases. Seem to always get like numerical superiority because of the way they build, because of that control element. What stands out is Or Brighton are good because of how they're coached, rather than maybe being a side who benefit from having good players who do things to make them win matches. What Brighton's success is built on what he's doing, the kind of things that he's implementing, rather than, as I said, relying on individual brilliance. Because although they have good players, there's no real superstars in the team at all. It's not as if there's one or two players carrying them through each week and getting points on the board. It's completely different. It's down to what he's doing. And I look back and think, if I pick a club who just lost a manager and should have moved for someone, we talked about from an Everton point of view, but for the reasons that you touched at the start, with the kind of character he is with the football he was going to implement, it probably wouldn't be the right fit at the moment anyway. But I think it's Tottenham. I think Tottenham were mad not to make a move for Potter. I think he could implement a style there really successfully. They've got so much better players than Brighton. He could make them a really, really good side, a competitive side again, and kind of 1-4 who could, be really competitive for a long time. But obviously they went for that short-term route and it didn't quite pay off for them. And now they're going with Conte, which, I mean, I don't know about you, Josh, kind of feels like he could be successful, but it'll still just be another short-term solution.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how Conte gets on, actually. But in terms of Potter, yeah, he's kind of added presence to his game this season as well. Like, if you look at pressures so far this season in the attacking third, Liverpool are top, then Southampton, well, Arsenal, no surprises there, then Brighton, and then Manchester City, Pep Guardiola, and then Leeds United, Marcelo Bielsa. So, Graham Potter, you wouldn't associate, I don't think, with pressing based on past years, but it seems to be developing as part of his game. And if you look at Opta's PPDA, so for those who are familiar with PPDA, the lower the figure, it indicates a higher level of pressing. The higher the figure, the lower the level of pressing. And top for PPDA in the league is Leeds United, no surprise. Then Liverpool, then Chelsea, and then Brighton. So just considering how he works, and specifically, I'm thinking, along the lines of he signed a 6-year contract fairly recently at Brighton. Think of where that will be in 2024. Think of specifically how well he's doing as part of Brighton's overall infrastructure. I think he's doing really, really well. Liverpool have that in place and will want a coach who can come in and just kind of keep it going, basically. I think he just looks like a bit of an outside-the-box candidate who could be really, really respected in 3 years' time. And, we're in memes now about, like, City seems to have earmarked Rodgers as the replacement for Pep, give him a bit of a whisper. And I wouldn't be surprised if, say, for example, Liverpool deem Potter to be that. In a year, in 18 months' time or something, give Potter a bit of a nudge and say, listen, Liverpool job in 2024, and I wouldn't be surprised if then he just kind of built himself up for that. But yeah, I don't want to give him too much credit because I still think it's a long shot. But he in my opinion, is becoming a very attractive coach, I think. And I think, as you said, Spurs was a good shout, but they went down the route of Conte. So yeah, we'll leave Brighton there. We'll move on to Atletico Madrid. Again, not going to speak about the game too much. But I wanted to flag certain things, such as, we have highlighted them as to how well he's doing this season when he's came in. What Kostas Tsimikas, Dave? Tsimikas, yeah. Very, very impressive. You can call him Kostas if you want, mate, just to avoid the...
listen, I've sorted that tongue gymnastics. I'm all right now. I know what it is. It was a one-off that will sadly go to the grave with me, I think. I'll never hear the end of it.
Listen, it's a good job no one got onto your pronunciation of Arsenal.
When was that one?
Oh, that's that one. You just got that one right there, but I think me with the Everton.
I was like that every time, mate. Like that every time. My mate Ralph. That's what it is. Ralph.
Go with first names.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tsimikas, he's performing well, mate.
He is, yeah. I think what's interesting now is he's he's not playing as token gestures, or he's not playing for the benefit of Robertson as the number one priority. It kind of feels like he's playing because he warrants playing, because he brings something to the team. And there's no major drop off when he does in terms of quality. Liverpool still perform really well. He's an asset on that side of the pitch. And numbers are backing up his performances, and watching him, you can see he's playing really well. So it's a testament to him because, as I said, 12 months ago, he was kind of seen as this, a backup, play him if Robertson needs a rest, or maybe just to give him a run out. But he's really transformed his position in the squad this year. It started with a good pre-season. Little bit lucky, I guess, that Robertson was injured for the start of the campaign, but he took advantage of it, and now he's firmly an important member of the team.
Yeah, I am writing a piece on him at the moment for the Echo, and because I remember very, very early on when he was kind of the perfect player for this podcast, really, because when we signed him, nobody had a clue what he was like. I was able to look at the data of the Greek Super League and find out a bit about his game and things like that. And he did show up as very attack-minded, especially in comparison to the other fullbacks in that league. Played well in Champions League matches. And he was linked, I think, as a Ben Chilwell replacement at Leicester. Also linked to Napoli as well. But I think coming in at Liverpool, obviously had a difficult first season, 1 or 2 injuries, and he had COVID, I think, as well. And Liverpool had no centre-back to play him alongside. So he just didn't get on the pitch. But this season, I think you can quite clearly see why Liverpool picked him up. I think he's very obviously I'm going to say a carbon copy of Robbo then, but I think he's closer. I think he's a bit of a mix of Robbo and Trent, because I think on the ball, I think he's got the playmaking elements of his game, and I think he's less of a Duracell bunny up and down the flanks like Robbo is.
You like his distribution better, don't you?
Yeah, I like his use of the ball. I specifically like his crosses. I think his crosses are spot on. His technique on his crosses are very, very good. Better than Robertson, in my opinion. Said that a few weeks back. And at the time, I also said that I would still have Robert as first choice, and that it's not close. Now, I still stand by that, but it's closer than it was then, if you know what I mean. He is convincing me more and more with every time he takes to the field. Whereas Robertson, I don't think he's playing badly, but I think it has been a while. It feels like it's been a while since he really stood out on the pitch. It's been a while since he, owned the performance and was really, God, Robert was great there. It's been quite a while since I've seen one of them from him.
Yeah, I'd actually agree with that. I wouldn't necessarily say something I've noticed, but now you're saying, I think, when was the last time he was, really that good? Not that he's been bad, because then you'd notice that as well.
It feels like he's always a 7 out of 10, doesn't it?
Yeah, 7 out of 10. That's it. Yeah. Whereas 2 years ago, he was kind of up there with Trent in terms of what they were doing in those positions. Although different skill sets being brought to the table, they were both kind of delivering similar results for Liverpool in terms of really good balls into the box, loads of threat, loads of danger, and just eased off a little bit. I'd actually be interested to see what Liverpool's attacking flanks look like this year, to see how heavily weighted they've been attacking down one side compared to the other. I might try and do that now while we're talking.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Robbo's numbers here in terms of his creation and stuff. I think he's only registered 2 assists. He's registered all season. Sorry, no, 1. That's 1 for Scotland there. So excluding his time for Scotland, obviously, he's registered 1 assist so far this season. His creation in terms of key passes and things like that. A key pass is obviously a pass that leads directly to a shot. It's still good. I mean, he's 5 key passes, 3 key passes, 3 key passes, 1, 3, 0, 2, 3, and then obviously, and then 1 against Brighton, 0 against Manchester United. So he's generally still creating opportunities and stuff, but it just, as I said, it just feels a little bit like he's shining a little bit less. But maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just going to take a few assists for us to take notes, which is, I suppose, a little bit of unconscious bias there. But I don't think it's something to worry about. But I think more, I want to shine a light on Tsimikas to be a really smart pickup. You know, we got him for just over 11 million, and it's the kind of outside the box signing that I think Liverpool maybe tried with Minamino. Hasn't worked as well, but I think Tsimikas he looks Premier League level to me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad to check that out actually, because in terms of right to left bias, Liverpool's is the most biased towards the right side this season across the whole Premier League. 42% of the attacks coming down the right compared to 31 down the left, which, as I said, is more than any other side. So that's quite interesting because although we are talking about Tsimikas doing quite well, he hasn't played as much Premier League football, has he? He's been getting these appearances elsewhere, like he did last night. So yeah, just a little interesting point on what we were talking about. That kind of ties in with maybe Liverpool being more heavily biased on the other side.
Yeah, before we move on to West Ham, I think we should give a flag towards Ox. I think it was very much an Ox type performance where you do come away from it thinking of what could be, because he did show plenty of moments where very dynamic, very difficult to dispossess, could carry the ball, good on the dribble. But then there would also be certain moments where he'd take on three players and then pass the ball to nobody, and we would concede a counter on the back of it. It's almost like he's moving at such a fast pace that his brain almost can't keep up with the decision, and he does something and then realizes afterwards, oh, I've given the ball away. But I think, considering I think he's 28. I do think it sums up his Liverpool career a little bit in terms of being a player who's got loads of potential, but I don't think he's gonna reach that ceiling.
No, I don't. I think he'll probably always be reflected on as a bit of an early man, and his career's got the caveat of the bad luck with the injuries, of course it has, but yeah, he does have that inconsistency to his game. He'll produce maybe one great performance in 6, and then you start thinking, oh, you know, he can be an asset finally, and then something happens, like he breaks down, you know, similar to what has happened last night, and you're kind of back to square one. It feels like Liverpool got a couple of players like that now. Dare to say, don't want to bring it up, but you know, you think Keita again, obviously fantastic, and then he gets injured, and then he's kind of set back again. Just a couple of those players that you just cannot rely on. And I'd sorry to say, I'd probably put Oxlade-Chamberlain in that bracket.
Yeah, it's I think Liverpool signed a few of these players a few years ago now, and when you get to spend a few years at the club, obviously Minamino's been here a little bit less, but Origi's been here for quite a while now. Ox has been here for a while. When they get to a point now where they haven't really established themselves as starters, you do think, okay, now we need a bit of a refresh here. I actually think in terms of Keita, although he's now unavailable, I think he's probably experiencing his best Liverpool period this season in terms of contributions on the pitch and getting things like that. But
again, do you not just think this is? Yeah, do you not just think it's just so typical that like then he just gets injured again?
Yeah, it's a shame. Hamstring injury, I think it was.
And that's what it is, by the way. It's a shame. It's not like you hate him and annoyed at him for nothing. It's just frustrating from a Liverpool perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, the injuries are frustrating at the minute, especially because obviously Liverpool have eight central midfielders, but I think there's only past few weeks it feels like there's only been 3 or 4 available at any one time, and as soon as someone comes back, someone else goes out. So it's one to keep an eye on. Maybe it's a positive that Liverpool have got an international break coming up, get some players back. But in terms of the weekend game, we have West Ham United. We were having a good season, Dave, under football genius David Moyes.
Hey, it doesn't feel as sarcastic anymore, does it?
No.
Yeah, no. He's done a really good job there. You're talking about a side who are very organised. They've got a really nice balance across the team. I mean, if you go their kind of standard starting 11. You've just got, I mean, look at the exact attacking positions. You've got Antonio, really hard working, but turned himself into quite a reliable goal scorer. Bowen, another hard worker. Benrahma, Flair, Fornell's a bit of everything. Declan Rice. I mean, there's a theme there. Go on, sorry.
I'm going to say, I think what you're saying there as well, those players you listen, they play every single week.
Yeah, they do. They have. I mean, this is. I keep expecting that to maybe become an issue with the Europa League participating in that. But we're kind of in the middle of it now, and they've sustained it, haven't they? Really? Maybe it'll come back to bite them at the end of the campaign. But they do. They just manage to play week in, week out, and they're just really good at set pieces. Can be dangerous on the counter if you try and commit men against them. Tend to do well in terms of creating chances. They're quite a likeable team, I think, Josh. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, I would. You mentioned the Europa League there. They've won 3 out of 3 in the Europa League group. Scored 7, conceded none. So considering they're not usually a team that competes in Europe, they are impressing in every area lately, to be honest, West Ham. And as you say, they've got a very good balance across the side. I really did like the acquisition of Kurt Zuma in the summer. I thought that was a great buy for them, considering how they play that kind of mid-block, lots of set-piece work. I thought Zuma was perfect for them. Always available, good age, really, really strong. Thought that was a great buy, and I think the way Moyes dedicated his money towards Zuma, I think West Ham's of previous years go and buy Lingard for that money. I think that's the difference, and I think Moyes has offered, although they don't really have I don't think they have a sporting director. They've only just recently recruited the head of recruitment. Moyes, I've always said it, I think he offers real. I just think he's very, very sensible in the market. I think he knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to transfers.
Yeah, I think that it's actually really impressive how he's come back from where he was, because if you think when he went back in there, or he was getting linked with Everton 2 years ago, no Everton fan wanted him. He'd been to Sociedad, bit of a failure. Sunderland, kind of forget that one now, but he was at Sunderland, bit of a failure. West Ham wasn't particularly looked on first time round with any, great appreciation, but it just shows if he's the type of manager, if he's just given time to sustain, I say sustain, to build and implement a style that he wants to, bring in the players he wants. He's a really effective coach, and I think West Ham's just a very good fit for him. And we're seeing him reap the rewards of it now, and it wouldn't be a surprise to me if they were again this season, maybe another top 6 side. I actually thought it was quite interesting, Josh, that according to 538, they've got them expecting to finish 5th this season, which, if they could sustain the Europa League campaign and go on and finish 5th, then that's a pretty remarkable season for them.
Well, I think that'll probably stem from the numbers, which I'm just looking at now, and they are really, really good. We're 10 games in, expected goals in attack, Liverpool top, City 2nd, Chelsea 3rd, West Ham 4th, and then in terms of shots, Liverpool top, City 2nd, West Ham 3rd. So 3rd for shots, 4th for XG so far after 10 games. As you say, players available every single week. Really good spine, I think. Players who can cover ground and things. One thing I have been a little bit surprised about, considering it is a Moyes team, is I think they've conceded a bit more than he'd like. But just generally, as a side, as a team unit, they're not a team I'm looking forward to playing, even though Liverpool were really good when we last faced them and played them off the park. I think it was a 3-0 win. This isn't the game that I'm looking forward to, really.
No, I mean, the 4th now, aren't they? I definitely wouldn't be looking forward to it, because, I've just brought up the results, and they've only lost 2 games all season, and one of them was against Manchester United. They conceded in the 89th minute, and the other one was Brentford. They conceded in the 90th minute. So they could have quite easily, in terms of results, ended up being draws rather than defeats. So they're just a very difficult side to overcome. Very difficult. So even if Liverpool are at the best, you still imagine it's going to be a tight game.
Yeah, it does remind me a lot of Moyes' Everton, fully enough, Dave. I think there's lots of similarities there, even to the extent that Aaron Cresswell is a left-footed left-back who is from Liverpool and takes set pieces. Considering the similarities there with Leighton Baines, and then you've got Souček and Fellaini comparisons, I suppose, and there's so many, I think, across the board.
Yeah.
And I think he's you could argue he was doing an equally good job to when he was peak at Everton.
Yeah, well, I suppose it goes back to Moyes and West Ham being a kind of good fit, similar to how Moyes and Everton were. They've kind of got enough of a pull as a club to bring in good players. They had some money as well, not a lot. West Ham have actually got a lot more than what Everton had when he was there, but the game's changed a little bit in that time. But really similar, and you can kind of bring in similar players, and it wouldn't surprise me, although we say it's quite a funny coincidence how West Ham have got these profiles that mirror that kind of late-noughties Everton side that was so good. It wouldn't surprise me if he's kind of sat down with the staff and used that Everton side as a blueprint in terms of trying to bring in profiles like that into the side and play in that specific effective way. It really wouldn't shock me if that's what they've done, because it certainly looks like it from the outside.
Yeah, very, very similar profiles across the board. And one of the areas in which they do seem to be thriving is set pieces. And I think similar, that was the case when he was at Goodison, I think, at times. So we touched a few weeks back on Liverpool set pieces. Liverpool have took 58 shots so far this season from set pieces. That's top of the league. Second is West Ham on 43. 4 goals they've scored from set pieces. Liverpool have scored 5. Now, when you say goals from set pieces, you immediately think headers. They're not always headers. Sometimes Liverpool's in particular are like second balls and stuff. But I think in the case of West Ham, at a guess, they probably would be headers, I think. But it's a threat that Liverpool have to cater for, Dave. And I think it's good that Fabinho's back on the side, a little bit of height. Liverpool obviously have Kanate, Van Dijk. So I think we have the tools to deal with it. But it's a threat that Liverpool have to cater for, definitely.
Yeah, I'm trying to see now if it specifically how many they've scored from headers so far. 2 seconds.
I don't think Souček's got very many this season, to be honest.
No, yes. I mean, yeah, they've had the second most headed shots in the division so far, 24, which is quite high. Only Burnley ahead of them, which is no surprise. And then Everton and United. So, Souček. I think Souček, though, is he not? Yeah, I think he's been playing a little bit deeper, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you do have a front four there of creative players who want to do the thing. So if you're encouraging Souček to also get in the box, there's an element of overkill there, I think.
Yeah, that's it. They've got really good attackers now, haven't they? Attacking players. So Souček doesn't really need to be that. Yeah, that's it. They've got really good attackers now, haven't they? Attacking players. So Souček doesn't really need to be that utility attacker. He can be a little bit more of that organic midfielder, which is why he's not going on the FPL team, Josh. Yeah.
So I think when it comes to West Ham, whenever we seem to play them away from home, we seem to score these daft counter attacks, specifically from their corners. I think Salah did it last season when Trent switched to play, Shaqiri switched to play again, and Salah took it down first touch and just slotted in the corner. Really good goal. I think a few years back, Oxlade-Chamberlain maybe might have got one, or maybe it was Salah again himself. So it's just a bit of a weird recurring theme whenever we seem to face West Ham away from home. But in terms of a result then, Dave, predictions, what are you going with here?
Tough one. I think I've only written I don't think I've written Liverpool off at all this season, but in terms of maybe not that winning results once or twice, and they've burnt me when I have. But again, without the benefit of hindsight, I have to look at this game and think it's a hard one. It is a hard one. I guess, will it go in Liverpool's favour that they have a days longer to prepare? Because I'm pretty sure West Ham be playing tonight, won't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're away as well, actually, in Belgium.
Yeah, so that not ideal, is it really? Even if they have navigated it all well so far. I'm going to go, Josh, with a 1-1.
Okay. I'm going to go with 2-1 Liverpool, I think. I don't think it'll be an easy game. These are a good side. But what I will say is, in the past few years, whenever Liverpool have to face a team from outside the traditional top 4/6 who are looking really, really good, Liverpool tends to really dominate them. It's like whenever Klopp's kind of like flagging to the players, this team is very, very good, and Liverpool get up for it against a team that individually are nowhere near Liverpool's level. Liverpool tends to really play very, very well. I'm thinking Leicester over the years. Whenever Liverpool play Leicester over the years, it absolutely suffocate them. And I'm not sure whether that'll happen against West Ham, but I think Klopp will go into this game with giving them a lot of respect. So I think Liverpool will expect a tough game, like they did last season, and when he went there and won 3-0. So I think it'll be tough, but I do think there's the potential here that Liverpool really, really turn up because they expect a tough game, and as a result of that, they end up dominating. But yeah, I'm going to go with a tight one. I'm going to say 2-1 to Liverpool. So yeah, we'll leave it there then, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Cheers, everyone. Who's after West Ham?
Is it the international break?
Oh, it's already, is it?
I think it is, yeah.
Come round quick, that.
Yeah, it is. So after West Ham, we have Arsenal on November 20th. That'll be a good one to preview, actually.
Yeah.
But
some interesting games coming up, actually. Arsenal,
yeah,
Ralph coming up, and then and Everton away.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to come up with something, won't we, for the international break? Like maybe another Q&A. But we did one of them fairly recently, so maybe you can look ahead to Liverpool's transfers or something like that. But yeah, thanks for joining us, mate. And yeah, listeners, thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back next week. See you then.